Hello fiber friends, and today we will be learning the Tunisian crochet mock rib stitch. And just like any fiber art, we will be starting with our slip knot, where you take your yarn, you flip it over itself to where you create the X. Right here you will hold that X in place so that you can keep that loop that you created on the side. Take your index and thumb finger and insert it from behind the loop and pinch onto your working yarn that is attached to your big ball of yarn, and you pull it through that loop, and that will be your slip knot. Today we will be using a 10mm Tunisian crochet hook, just so that these stitches are easier to see. For this one, you basically insert it into that loop and then you pull, and right there is your slip knot. Now this stitch does require multiples of 2, and then you add 2 stitches into whatever number you get to. So as long as you want it, as long as it is a multiple of 2, then it is fine. Today I'm going to be working 10 stitches, which obviously is an even number, so you can definitely do 2. You can do as long or as short as you'd like, but today we are doing 10 stitches. Now to do that, we will start with our chains. To make chains, you will take your working yarn, grab it with the crook of your hook, and pull it through that loop, and that is your first chain. We'll show that again. You will grab your working yarn with the crook of your hook and then pull it through the loop, and that is your second chain. And we will continue until we have 10 chains. So we have our 10 chains. Now what we are going to do is we are going to flip it over, and we are going to be working in these back bumps, these little bumps that show up in the back. Now for me, I like to use the little end of my hook right here to slide into these back bumps, because it makes it so much easier than trying to push this part of the hook into each one. Right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to skip the first bump, which will be right here, and go on to our second bump right there. So you insert that tip of your hook in that bump, push it through, you take your working yarn and yarn over your hook, and with the crook of your hook you will pull that through that bump. We'll show that again in the next bump right here. You will insert your hook into that bump, push it through, take your working yarn and yarn over, and with the crook of your hook pull it through that loop. And you're going to continue all the way down to your last little bump. Alright, so this is what it will look like, and this is where you will make sure that you have all of the stitches that you had wanted. I wanted to have 10 stitches, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. It is very easy to skip a stitch at this point or skip a bump, but definitely always make sure that it is the amount of stitches that you want it to be. Now, once we are finished with making those little loops, we are going to take our yarn grab it with the crook of our hook and pull it through one of those loops that we have just made. Then we're going to grab that crook, or grab that yarn again and pull it through 2 loops. And we are going to continue pulling through 2 loops all the way down until you only have 1 loop left on your hook. Now this is what's considered a foundation chain. Most Tunisian crochet will begin this way. And that is how that looks. Now, this has a special stitch called the Twisted Tunisian Simple Stitch. This is a little difficult. I would say this is not a beginner stitch at all. I would say it's a little more intermediate. But again, once you get very comfortable with it, or once you practice it enough times, it does become easier with time, like most things. So with this, our first loop on our hook, it counts as our first stitch right here. So that means we will be skipping this first loop right here that's on the outside. Because this counts as our first stitch, we skip this one. Now, what we're going to do is we find that next loop, and that vertical bar right here, that's the closest to us, we're going to insert our hook right through that vertical bar. Now what we're going to do, instead of yarning over, we're going to hook that bar into the crook of our hook and spin our hook upward. That way this is now twisted. You see that twist that it just created. Then you will yarn over your working yarn with the crook of your hook, pull it through that loop we just twisted. Then the next stitch will be a regular Tunisian crochet simple stitch, where you find that next loop right there, and the bar closest to you, you will insert, yarn over, and pull. This is going to be alternating. So let me show that twisted stitch again, where you find your next loop, and you will insert your hook in the bar that is the closest to you. You will insert it right there. Grab that bar that you just inserted to with the crook of your hook and twist it upward right there to cause that little twist there. Yarn over with your working yarn and pull that through. And then again, we will do another simple stitch where you find your next loop, insert in the bar that's closest to you, yarn over and pull through. And you will work that all the way down to the end. So now we are at our last stitch at the end. Now it's always going to look a little funky, but what you are going to see is the loops that we have been seeing throughout the entire thing, and an extra bar of yarn on the most outermost part. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work into that stitch right there, right? The hole, so that these 2 bars are on the outside. So you push your hook through, yarn over, and with the crook of your hook, pull it through that loop. And this is how it should look so far. Now what we're going to do is the same back pass as before. We're going to grab the yarn with the crook of our hook, pull through one loop, then we're going to grab that yarn, the working yarn, and pull through 2 loops, and we're going to continue to pull through 2 loops until we have only 1 loop left on our hook. Okay, this is how it looks so far. And what we're going to do is we are going to do the same exact thing in this next row. Now, again, first loop on our hook counts as our first stitch, so we skip this first loop here. So this little loop right here, the next one right there, with the bar that's closest to us, we will insert our hook into that bar, grab that bar with the crook of our hook, and twist it upward. Just like that. Then we take our working yarn, yarn over, and pull through that loop we made by twisting it. Then we do the simple stitch where you find your next loop right here. Sometimes they can be a little funky. You can see how this almost goes upward, but if you pull it down, you can see that loop right there. Insert in the bar that's closest to you, yarn over, and pull it through. Then we will do that again, the twisted one first. The bar that's closest to you, you will insert into that bar, grab the bar with the crook of your hook, and twist it upward. Yarn over, and then pull through that twisted loop you just made. Then the next one, the bar that's closest to you, you will insert it right in there, yarn over, and pull through. And we're going to continue that all the way down until our second to last stitch there. Okay, now we are on our last stitch right here. Again, it's always going to look funky, but if you kind of just press it just a little bit right there, you can see that loop and that extra bar of yarn going on the outermost part of your work. Insert inside of that loop so that the 2 bars are on the outside. Yarn over and pull that yarn through that loop. So far, this is how it looks. And we are going to pull through 1 loop. And then once we do that, we will grab our yarn again and pull through 2 all the way down until we only have 1 loop left on our hook. And that is how it looks so far. I'm going to continue working this pattern just so that you can have a larger point of reference and you can see it a little more fully. I'll do that off camera. Da-da-da-da. So this is how the stitch looks It is supposed to emulate the knit rib stitch, the 1x1 rib stitch. Now, this is a very dense kind of fabric that it creates, but it drapes very well. So it's not stiff. It doesn't curl as much as a lot of the other stitches do. But again, there is a little more holes in it just because I used a 10mm just so that the stitches were easy to see. But yeah, that is how it looks. It is a very gorgeous pattern, and I hope you guys can use it very well. Happy crafting!